Hey guys, I wanted to share another story from a viewer on a possible cover-up. This comes out of Pennsylvania, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Happened on May 24th. The moon at that time was a waning gibbous. He says, I live with my grandfather. We have a small farm and I help with the feeding and chores around the farm. He said, I noticed that some feed had been missing and that the door to the barn had been left open on several occasions. He was having trouble with feed coming up missing. The barn door was being left open. Things moved around. He first initially thought that it was some kids or somebody messing around. He said, I forgot to open a bag one night of feed, and I was being lazy because I was tired. And the next morning, whenever I went in, the feed was tore apart, opened, and like something had ate out of it. Not a lot of it was on the ground, but there was a big hole inside of the feed bag where it had been ripped open and placed neatly up against the side of the wall. On May 15th, Sunday, I was late feeding because I hung out with some friends after church. So he got in late that night, and of course he had to feed. All of us, we have a farm here, you have to feed. And he said I was feeding, and the door was open again, and when I started to feed, the pigs there were all running around as they normally do, waiting on me to feed them. And while I was out feeding them, there was a loud howl. But this howl was not like any howl we'd ever heard. We've heard coyotes in the country, he says, many times. We're very used to hearing the howls, the yipping and everything. But this was like a man-animal howl, he says. And whenever it happened, the pigs went crazy, almost knocking him down, trying to run into the barn. And he says, the pigs never react this way, not even to the coyotes that get pretty close to their farm, and they howl and yip. He said, so it was a very weird, deep, loud howl, humanish kind of. He said, I went inside and I told my grandfather. His grandfather knows a Indian gentleman that lives in the area that knows a whole lot about the Indian ways, Indian stories, and things of that nature. He also helps with other things in the town. Very knowledgeable man. He said my grandfather said he would talk to his friend. His friend's name was Sonny. The Indian friend, he said, would know probably what they could do. He said my grandfather started feeding with me because he didn't want me to be alone, as he would carry his old 30-30 with him to make sure we were safe. Grandpa did not feel that we were safe, and it was unlike Grandpa to feel that we were not safe in the area. Our home has always been a safe place for us. He said Grandpa had decided after a few more times of the feed been stolen, ate, ripped apart, doors left open, even the pigs getting out at times because the gates were left open, that Grandpa was going to stay the night outside and he was going to catch what was doing it. His grandpa had stayed out one night, late into the night, and he heard the rustling of the brush, and he heard the humanish howl and everything, and he thought, oh, tonight's going to be the night I'm going to see it, I'm going to catch it. Well, that night it did come up to the house, but what he seen was something like he did not expect to see. He said it was around 8 to 9 foot tall, very broad. It was humanish, animal looking. He said the best he could make out, it was very hairy, very large, very wide, had loud grunting and sounded as if it had asthma. He said it had like a kind of a growl to its breath, like it was having trouble breathing, or it was large, but he said it sounded asthmatic, like an asthma person would have. So he took 2 shots at the monster. It took off running very far into the woods. Grandpa was aggravated because he was unable to get the creature. The next morning, upon investigation, there was no blood or no hair in the area, but Grandpa then found out what was wrong. Along the fence that we have that holds the pig in, Grandpa had put large pieces of wood to hold the fence steady. The 2 bullets had struck the wood and were into the wood, so the bullets were, he hit the fence instead of hitting the monster, so the creature was never struck. Grandpa had then decided that he was going to stay in the barn all night. This way he could catch the creature as it came into the barn, and he would be at close range and would be able to, I guess, remedy the situation. The next morning, as I woke, I got up to do breakfast as we normally do on any other morning. And whenever I went in to make the breakfast, Grandpa was not at the table as usual, and the paper was not on the table that he normally read on Sunday and other mornings. I went out to the barn to look for Grandpa because sometimes he would feed earlier than me to make sure that I was safe, and he did not want me doing it. As I entered the barn, I found something that I will never, ever forget. My grandpa was laying in the barn with his head in the feed bucket like he had fell over. I thought Grandpa had had a heart attack, so I called 911. Grandpa was taken to the hospital, to where the doctor later came out and told us that Grandpa was deceased and they was unable to save him. Grandpa's body was sent for an autopsy. The autopsy report that we received back, I jumped a little ahead. He said, speaking to the doctor told us that Grandpa has sustained some damage that they didn't want to go into, that the autopsy report would explain everything. He said, we then went and spoke to the gentleman that does the autopsies and the funeral in our town. Our town of New Hope is a small town. He said he told me that on Grandpa, he'd had scratch marks on both sides of his face, like he'd been attacked by a large animal. He said large claw marks covered both sides of his face. It was going to cost us extra money to have an open casket funeral because they would have to do some cosmetic work, which we were glad to pay because Grandpa's friends, he said, would want to see Grandpa laid to rest. We were thinking still at the time that it was an animal. And of course, he says it would turn out to be an animal. Grandpa's work was done. As we spoke to the funeral gentleman that had also performed the autopsy, he advised us that Grandpa's neck had been broken. It was twisted around. And the way that Grandpa's neck was broken was if it had been twisted. It was not from a fall, but as it had been twisted. Still, nobody in town would believe us when we told the story. We were ridiculed, made fun of, and almost embarrassed to speak about it. So as the time went on, people started talking about how Grandpa was killed by a possible attack by one of our smaller ponies, that he was probably kicked, which didn't make sense. We received the autopsy report, hoping to put the rumors to rest in town and to show people that Grandpa's neck had been twisted, and that Grandpa's neck was broken, that there were claw marks on both sides of his cheek that were wider than any animal that the coroner said he had seen. The autopsy report did not include any of this that the coroner had told us. In fact, the autopsy report stated it looked as if Grandpa had tripped, fell, and hit his head on the barrel, breaking his neck. The scratch marks that were on his face were put as unknown scratches to the face, possibly from the fall. The coroner completely turned his story around. We tried to speak to him about this numerous times, and he told us he is not allowed to talk about it, that his decision is his decision, and that is what he will have to stay with. And he will have to stay with, not what he wants to. And those words are very important. This is what he will have to stay with. I just want everybody to know that these creatures are real. Be careful if you're going out and trying to stop them, because if something happens to you or a loved one, you can almost guarantee it will be covered up. They don't want the truth out there, and they will go as far to even saying that you fall, hit your head on a barrel, break your neck, and that the scratches on your face were somehow just placed there. It's very sad, but we all know what happened. I hope everybody is safe out there and know that these things will attack you. They will kill you. They are wild animals. Thank you for your time, and I hope I've helped a lot of people. Be aware and to know that it is not safe to hunt these creatures. Thank you very much. Earl, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Thank you for reaching out to us. Our condolences to your grandfather. We're sorry that that happened. Prayers and well wishes for you. And it's sad that if that happened, that the truth is being held out like that. One of these days we will find the truth. There's a lot of good investigators out there, and the more we keep going, the closer we're going to get. Even though they're trying to shut a lot of investigators out, we will get there, because of you guys not giving up. The more you view, the more you watch, the more you give us likes. Our algorithm goes up. If they like it or not, the word gets out, and eventually they'll give up on trying to stop us, and the word will go out and we will grow. I appreciate each and every one of you. God bless. Keep your head on a swivel and be careful. Watch your kids if you're outside, and have a happy 4th of July weekend. Be very safe. There'll be a lot of people out camping this weekend. Keep an eye on your kids. Remember, it only takes 1 second for them to disappear. State parks, be careful on those. And just be aware of your surroundings. Keep your head on a swivel. Have a great holiday, and God bless.